iOS 18.5 is transitioning to iOS 26 to correspond with the year of its release next year, 2026. But not just iOS, macOS, tvOS, iPadOS, and even visionOS are all getting the same treatment to consolidate all the different versions down to one new consistent format. This is just one of many changes that Apple announced at their Worldwide Developer Conference, or more commonly known as WWDC, today. iOS 26 and all its partners bring new features across the entire ecosystem, including an all-new design that Apple is coining the term liquid glass for. It's essentially just transparent background and glass-like reflections across your app icons and widgets throughout the ecosystem. iOS 26 more specifically brings features to almost every app, including but not limited to the Camera app, the Messages app, Apple Maps, Apple Wallet, and even Apple CarPlay and Apple CarPlay Ultra. So if you missed it, here's a breakdown of all the changes coming to iOS 26 for both users and developers. Hi everyone, welcome back to Life in Tech with SK. I'm SK and let's get started. Firstly, let's talk about all the changes for users coming in iOS 26, and then we'll talk about where developers can slide in with their own applications, because Apple is giving developers access to new APIs across the ecosystem. So, starting with what I was talking about in the intro, there's a new design language that is going to be consistent amongst all devices in the Apple ecosystem, and they're calling it liquid glass. Again, it gives you this water-like transparent effect, but not just across apps and widgets, it's going to be consistent and in almost every single corner of the Apple ecosystem. I'm almost certain people are going to complain as soon as their phones update, but by making things more transparent, they're kind of pseudo increasing how much screen real estate that you have, because by making the apps transparent, it gives the illusion that you have more screen space because you can kind of see through them. So similar to when people's phones updated to One UI 7, I imagine there's going to be a lot of complaints, but we'll save that for another video. But speaking of Android updates, Apple seems to have taken a bite out of Samsung and Google's playbook by updating their visual intelligence capabilities to include search functions inside of apps, similar if not identical to the circle to search function available on Android phones. So if you're not familiar, what visual intelligence will now let you do is when you take a screenshot, it will then search the web for any similar items that it sees on your screen, be it food, clothes, dogs, you name it. You can also use it to add events to your calendar. If it detects that there's an event date, location, and time on your screen, then it will give you an option to add it to your calendar for future use. You can also use visual intelligence to ask ChatGPT something specifically. So if you want to ask ChatGPT about what's on your screen, it'll upload it and send it to ChatGPT, and then you can ask any questions based around that image. I will say this is a nice add-on to visual intelligence and making good use of ChatGPT, which Android devices lack at the current moment. However, this does come with increased privacy and data concerns, so sharing your data with ChatGPT is completely optional. So you only share what you want to share when you want to share. But while we're speaking about data and privacy, let's talk about the changes coming to the Apple Wallet. Apple has partnered with over 20 car manufacturers to allow you to add your car keys virtually inside your Apple Wallet, with many more on the way. Some notable names like Audi, Mercedes, Volvo, and Kia are already a part of this process, just to name a few. And in future, some more manufacturers like Porsche, Cadillac, and GMC are also looking at letting you add this functionality as well. For United States customers only, Apple will now let you load your digital ID inside your Apple Wallet, which they say will be applicable and acceptable for domestic flights in 17 states. To double down on their new changes for travel, they've added a new refreshed boarding pass in the Apple Wallet, and they've also now added live activities for things such as flight tracking inside the wallet. And while you're busy tracking flights, you'll also now be able to track orders inside of Apple Wallet. This is because iOS 26 will rely on Apple Intelligence and post any order updates into your Apple Wallet, so you can see all your various deliveries and orders all in one place. But Apple is making it a bit easier to talk to your friends that you made abroad by adding on-device live translation during phone calls and messages. Another little quick jab at the Android AI features that are available. So during FaceTime calls, Apple Intelligence will transcribe and translate what is being said in real time so that no one has to switch languages mid-conversation to communicate with each other. I will say that the voice that it uses after it's done translating is quite robotic and not very human sounding at all, so I think they need to do some refining there, but give it a listen for yourself.
Hallo, sind Sie für eine Hochzeit am 6. Dezember verfügbar?
But translation will also happen in messages like we said, so you don't need to be on calls only to be able to use it. But that gives me a nice, conveniently unplanned segue to be able to talk about the new changes coming to the Messages app. So as part of iOS 26, in Messages group chats, you'll now be able to create a poll that you and your friends can vote on to make any future decisions. And Apple Intelligence will use the context of the Messages app to try and suggest a poll when someone asks a question based if there were some given options beforehand. And once you and your friends have decided where to go using polls, you can make use of another feature in the Messages app because Apple will now allow you to make Apple Cash requests in group chats and not just individual conversations to send and receive money. But one last thing they added to the Messages app is if you often receive spam messages from unknown numbers, then it will filter those messages out if they seem unimportant into their own folder called unknown numbers. And if a message does come from an unknown number but looks important, then it will get put into your regular inbox like normal messages. I think it's leaning heavily on Apple Intelligence for this, so I would say if you get it, just check the unknown numbers folder in case you're expecting some really important messages to come from an unknown number. So don't take it at face value, because I think even Google misses my bank statements sometime and labels them as spam. So just check it out and test it out for yourself. But even so, this feature isn't limited to just the Messages app, because the phone app is also going to be getting call screening. And how that will work is if someone calls your phone, it will silently answer it in the background, and once they give their name and why they're calling you, it'll send you a message about what they said, so you can figure out whether you want to pick it up or not. So you can decide whether it's a friend waiting at the door or someone trying to ask you about your car's extended warranty. The phone app also gets hold assist, and how that works is if you're on a call and get put on hold and it detects that standard boring elevator music that gets played everywhere, then it will ask you if you want to turn on hold assist, which will keep you connected to the call while you're able to go do other things around your phone. And once you're connected to an operator on the call, it will then notify you so that you can rejoin the call and pick up where you left off. I'm really hoping this works well, because goodness me, do municipalities keep you on hold. Insurers, car people, doesn't matter. If this works well, I might just get an iPhone just for this feature. Apple CarPlay also gets some small updates, including the new liquid glass design as part of the package. But you'll also now be able to add widgets to Apple CarPlay in the infotainment screen. So you can have things like your pinned conversations ready and readable. And you also get live activities. So remember that flight tracking we were talking about? You could add flight tracking as part of the widgets and live activities to your car. And you can see whether your friend's flight's on time, delayed, or if you need to really speed up. You can also add things like your football score. So if you're driving home from work but don't want to miss the scoreline, then you can add that as part of your live activities to Apple CarPlay as well. Apple CarPlay Ultra, if you haven't seen, is Apple's new way of integrating and merging the software on your phone with the one on your car. So not only will you get the features of regular Apple CarPlay, so your phone mirrored on the infotainment screen, but you'll also be able to update the design of the driver's side instrument cluster, which is really cool. Apple's also saying that you'll be able to update the climate controls of the car from within Apple CarPlay. Honestly, I think this is a genius move. It's nice to leave the car manufacturing to the car manufacturer and the software design of the car to Apple. Obviously, don't leave everything up to Apple, because imagine you disconnect your phone and your car just turns off. Yikes. But it's nice to see that Apple is the lead in terms of the aesthetics that are coming to the new Aston Martins. Now, it wouldn't be called Worldwide Developer Conference if Apple didn't give something to the people who develop the apps that run on their devices. And Apple has opened up quite a few APIs that developers can integrate with. For one, Apple is giving developers access to the on-device language models that run on iPhones, using an API they call the Foundations Model Framework. And I'm really excited to see what developers can cook up by having on-device language models run inside of their apps. We spoke briefly about translation inside of the phone and messages app. Well, Apple is giving developers access to their call translation API as well. And I imagine companies like Microsoft might want to jump at the opportunity to integrate it as part of their Teams app. But if you're a developer and your app makes use of calling or messaging functionality, then you should probably look at adding the call translation API as part of your implementation. Don't say I didn't tell you. The last couple of APIs that Apple is going to be exposing for developers is one for their Game Center. So if you have a competitive game that you want to keep competitive, then you can make use of their Game Center API to create a leaderboard amongst friends all playing the same game. And finally, if you want to get in on the visual intelligence search capabilities, then Apple makes their App Intent API available to you. So I imagine apps like Instagram or Pinterest might want to use this so that you can search anything that you see on your screen on any of those apps and find it almost immediately on Google. And that's all I have for iOS 26 from WWDC. Let me know what you think about the new changes coming to iOS in the comment section below. Apple also covered a little bit more about their other software platforms like macOS, and even more inspiring to see is their changes coming to iPadOS. So if you want me to cover that, let me know as well, and I'll get working on that yesterday. But if you want to see me, an Android and Windows user, suffer through switching through macOS for 2 weeks, well then you can click on this video here and I'll either see you there or in the next video. Peace.